Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into a really tricky one, the sleeping beauty problem.
Yes, it's a classic. Definitely causes some headaches in probability circles and philosophy, too.
Right. It sounds simple, but, well, there's just no consensus. So let's set it up for everyone listening. You're kind of in this experiment with us.
Okay, imagine this. Sleeping Beauty, let's call her SB, she goes to sleep on Sunday.
Got it. Sunday night.
Then a fair coin gets flipped. Heads or tails? 50-50 chance.
Standard coin flip. Okay.
Now, if it's heads, she only wakes up once on Monday. Then she goes back to sleep, and the experiment's over for her.
Okay. Heads is simple. One wake up.
But if it's tails, she wakes up on Monday, gets put back to sleep, and then wakes up again on Tuesday. Then back to sleep for good.
So tails means two awakenings, Monday and Tuesday.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. Every time she's put back to sleep, an amnesia drug ensures she forgets ever being awake before.
Wow. Okay. So each time she wakes up, it feels like the very first time. She has no clue if it's Monday or Tuesday or if she was awake yesterday.
Precisely. No new information about the day or the coin result. The only thing she's told each time she wakes up is the setup of the experiment, and then she's asked one question.
Which is?
What is your credence? Or, what do you believe is the probability that the coin came up heads?
Okay. So she knows the rules, wakes up with amnesia, and has to state her belief about the coin flip. You might already have an answer forming in your head right now.
Hold on to that initial thought.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, their first instinct is, well, 1/3.
1/3. Why?
Well, they think, okay, when I'm awake, what are the possibilities? It feels like there are 3 potential states she could find herself in.
Right. You could be awake on Monday and the coin was heads. That's one.
Monday heads, yep. Or you could be awake on Monday and the coin was tails.
Monday tails, that's 2.
And the third one.
Tuesday, and the coin must have been tails for her to be awake then. So Tuesday tails.
Exactly. Monday heads, Monday tails, Tuesday tails. 3 possibilities.
And only one of those involves heads. So 1 out of 3, 1/3.
That's the intuitive leap many people make. But then you pause and think.
Hang on a second. It was a fair coin. How can the probability of a fair coin landing heads suddenly become 1/3? That feels wrong.
That's the heart of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And this feeling, this sticking to the coin's nature, leads us straight to the Haffer camp.
The Haffers. Okay, so what's their main line of reasoning?
It's pretty direct, really, they say. Look, Sleeping Beauty knows, before the experiment even starts, that it's a fair coin. 50% heads, 50% tails.
Right. That's a given premise of the experiment.
And crucially, they argue, nothing she learns upon waking changes that underlying fact. She doesn't get told the day, she doesn't get told the coin result. She gets no new relevant information.
So if she hasn't learned anything new about the coin flip itself, why should her belief about its probability change from 50%?
Precisely. Think about it. If you asked her on Sunday before she fell asleep, what's the probability the coin will be heads? What would she say?
50%, obviously.
So the Haffer asks, why should falling asleep, maybe waking up once or twice, and having her memory wiped, change that fundamental probability? She knew the rules. She knew she'd be woken at least once.
Okay, I can definitely see that logic. It focuses purely on the initial random event, the coin flip. The subsequent procedure doesn't alter the physics of the coin.
That's the Haffer view in a nutshell. The probability refers to the coin, and that was and remains 50-50.
But then, what about that compelling 1/3 argument? Let's revisit the thirders. How do they justify shifting from 50%?
They focus not on the coin flip in isolation, but on Sleeping Beauty's perspective each time she is awake and asks the question.
Okay. It's about her subjective viewpoint during an awakening.
Yes. When she's awake, she knows she is currently in one of the possible awakening states, as we listed them. Monday heads, Monday tails, or Tuesday tails.
Right, those 3 scenarios again.
The thirders argue that, from her point of view, lacking any information to distinguish them, each of these 3 awakening slots is equally likely to be the one she is currently experiencing.
So it's like, I'm awake now. Which of the 3 possible awake situations am I in? And since she can't tell,
she should assign equal probability to each. And since only one of those 3 states, Monday heads, corresponds to the coin being heads,
her probability for heads, given that she's currently awake, must be 1/3.
Exactly. The key is that the question is implicitly, what is the probability of heads given your current state of being awake? It's a conditional probability based on her immediate experience.
Okay. That distinction feels important. One side focuses on the coin event itself, the other on the state of being awake and asks the question.
That's a good way to put it.
Now, surely the Halfers don't just let that lie. How do they respond to this idea of three equally likely states upon awakening?
Well, they push back strongly. They'd say something like, hold on, just because you can list three outcomes doesn't mean they are equally probable.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Like, isn't that similar to the mistake people make with the Monty Hall problem? Seeing two doors left and assuming it's 50-50?
Exactly. It's a great analogy. The Halfer perspective maintains the underlying probabilities. They
Yeah.
see it as there's a 50% chance the whole scenario is heads.
Which involves one awakening on Monday,
Right. And there's a 50% chance the scenario is tails.
which involves two awakenings, Monday and Tuesday.
So they might think of the total probability space being split 50% for the heads world with its single awakening and 50% for the tails world with its two awakenings.
Yeah.
If you had to distribute that tails probability across the two awakenings, maybe you'd think of it as 25% for Monday tails and 25% for Tuesday tails, but the core is 50% heads versus 50% tails overall.
Okay, so they resist equating the awakenings themselves as having equal initial probability.
Correct. They anchor it to the kind. But the thirders have a powerful counter-argument here, often based on thinking about frequencies if the experiment were repeated many, many times.
Ah, the long-run argument. Okay, so if we did this to Sleeping Beauty, say, 1,000 times, poor woman, what would happen?
Well, roughly 500 times the coin would land heads, and 500 times it would land tails.
Makes sense. Fair corn.
So there would be 500 Monday heads awakenings.
Mhm.
But for the 500 tails outcomes, she wakes up twice each time.
Right. So that's 500 Monday Tails Awakenings and 500 Tuesday Tails Awakenings.
Exactly. So across all those trials, how many total awakenings are there?
Let's see. 500 from heads, plus 500 Monday ones from tails, plus 500 Tuesday ones from tails. That's 1,500 awakenings total.
Right. And out of those 1,500 total awakenings, how many occurred when the coin was heads?
Only the initial 500 Monday heads ones.
So what fraction of her total awakenings happened when the coin was heads?
500 out of 1,500. That's 1/3.
Bingo. The thirders argued that if you average over many trials, her experience is that 1/3 of the time she finds herself awake, the coin state was heads. So her credence, when awake, should reflect this long-run frequency.
Wow, okay. That frequency argument is pretty persuasive from her perspective. It connects her subjective state of being awake to an objective long-run statistic about those awakenings.
It really does seem to bridge that gap, but it's also deeply counterintuitive, isn't it? How can her subjective experience, repeated, somehow change the probability of a past fixed event like a coin flip?
It feels like it shouldn't, but the numbers seem to work out that way from the perspective of the awakenings themselves. This is making my head spin a bit.
You're not alone. This differing focus initial event probability versus conditional probability given awakening leads to some wild thought experiments when you tweak the parameters.
Like what?
Well, imagine instead of tails leading to 2 awakenings, it leads to, say, 1,000,000 awakenings. Scattered throughout the week, maybe. Head still just leads to 1 awakening on Monday.
1,000,000. Okay, so heads, Monday wake up. Tails wake up 1,000,000 times.
Now she wakes up. She doesn't know the day, doesn't know how many times she's woken before. She's asked the question, what's the probability the coin was heads?
Does the Halfer still say 50%?
The hardcore Halfer has to say yes. The coin was fair, 50-50. Nothing learned changes that initial fact.
Pearly, if she wakes up, isn't it overwhelmingly more likely that she's in one of those million possible awakenings caused by tails rather than the single awakening caused by heads?
That's the incredibly strong thirder intuition in this variation. It feels almost certain, from her perspective of being awake, that the coin must have landed tails. The probability of heads seems vanishingly small, like 1 in 1,000,001.
Yeah, it feels like drawing a single white marble from a bag that, contains either that one white marble or 1,000,000 black marbles. If you draw a marble, you'd be pretty sure it's black.
It's a powerful analogy. And this line of reasoning, where the sheer number of instances or experiences seems to shift the probability, connects to some other big ideas.
Oh, like what?
Well, some people draw parallels to discussions around the simulation argument.
You mean the idea that we might be living in a computer simulation? How does that connect?
The argument, in a nutshell, is if it becomes possible in the future to create highly realistic conscious simulations, maybe vast numbers of them, and if our consciousness could exist in either the base reality or one of these simulations,
Okay.
then much like Sleeping Beauty waking up, when we find ourselves conscious, shouldn't we consider it vastly more probable that we're in one of the potentially countless simulated realities rather than the single base reality?
Ah, because there are just so many more slots for consciousness to exist in the simulated universes, just like there were more awakening slots in the Tails scenario.
That's the connection some people make. The Thurner perspective, emphasizing the multiplicity of awakenings or instances, seems to align with the reasoning that makes the simulation hypothesis seem plausible to its proponents. It's about probability shifting based on the number of possible observer moments.
Okay, that's a fascinating, if slightly unnerving, parallel. But let's try and poke holes in the Thurner logic again. Is there a thought experiment that challenges their intuition?
There are several, but here's one I like. Imagine a crucial soccer game. Brazil versus Canada. Brazil is heavily favored, say, an 80% chance to win. Canada only has a 20% chance.
Okay, unlikely upset potential.
Now, the experiment is, if Brazil wins, the likely outcome, you'll be woken up once on Monday to be told the result. If Canada wins, the unlikely outcome, you'll be woken up 30 times, Tuesday through sometime next month, each time being told Canada won. Amnesia applies each time.
Right, so likely event, one wake up. Unlikely event, lots of wake up.
Now, you wake up, you're told the rules, you have amnesia, and someone says Canada won. Or maybe they just ask, what do you think the probability is that Canada won? What does your gut tell you?
Well, the pure Thurner logic, focusing on awakenings, might suggest Canada is more likely because there are 30 potential Canada 1 awakenings versus only one Brazil 1 awakening.
Right. If you are awake, it seems more likely you're in one of the more numerous awakening types.
But my intuition screams that Brazil probably won. They had an 80% chance. Waking up, even multiple times, doesn't change the fact that Canada winning was a long shot to begin with. If I had to bet money on the actual game result based only on having woken up, I'd still bet on Brazil.
Exactly. This highlights the tension. What are you trying to be right about? Are you trying to guess the actual outcome of the football game, where betting on Brazil seems sensible? Or are you trying to guess which type of awakening you're currently experiencing, where Canada won't? Awakenings are far more numerous.
Ah. So if you played this game repeatedly, betting on Brazil each time would likely win you more bets on the actual game outcomes, even though you'd find yourself experiencing the Canada 1 awakenings more often overall.
That's the argument. It brings us back to the core dispute. Halfers prioritize being right about the underlying random event, the coin toss, the match, while thirders prioritize being right about the state they are in, given that they are in an instance of being awake.
It's like they're answering slightly different questions, almost. One about the world state, one about their indexical present moment states.
That's a very common interpretation, yes.
Yeah.
The indexical information, I am awake now, is interpreted differently.
Okay, let's push this one final step. A really big picture version.
Lay it on me.
Imagine, way back, before anything existed, some cosmic process flipped a coin.
Okay, a primordial coin flip.
Heads meant one single universe gets created. Just ours. That's it.
Simple universe. Got it.
Tails meant a quasi-infinite multiverse gets created. Countless universes, maybe infinite variations of Earth. Every possibility plays out somewhere.
Whoa. Okay, single universe versus practically infinite multiverse.
Here you are. You've just become conscious. You exist. You know about this initial cosmic coin flip possibility, but you have no way of knowing which outcome actually happened. You can't see outside our universe to check for others.
Right. I just have my own existence as data.
So, based on the Sleeping Beauty logic, what should you conclude? Should you, like a halfer, say, well, it was a 50-50 coin flip initially, so the probability is still 50% that we're in the single universe? Or, like a thirder might argue, should you say, my conscious existence is like an awakening. There are vastly, quasi-infinitely more slots for conscious observers like me in the multiverse scenario than in the single universe scenario. Therefore, given that I am conscious, it's overwhelmingly probable that the coin landed tails and I'm in a multiverse.
That really scales the problem up, doesn't it? It forces us to confront whether the sheer potential number of observers influences the probability of the underlying reality structure.
It's the same dilemma. Does the number of possible experiences, awakenings, conscious observers, change the probability of the event that generated those experiences?
And again, there's no easy answer. It pits the initial objective chance against the conditional probability given our own existence. It's profound.
It really is. This whole Sleeping Beauty thing, it seems so contained at first, just a person waking up. But it spirals out into these fundamental questions about probability, evidence, perspective, even the nature of reality itself.
Absolutely. It's a perfect example of how a seemingly simple thought experiment can expose deep fissures in our understanding and intuitions. The fact that brilliant minds continue to debate it vigorously shows just how tricky these concepts are.
Yeah, no easy resolution here, which is kind of the point, I guess. It makes you think.
It definitely does. So we have to turn it back to everyone listening now. We've walked through the half review, the third review, the variations, the implications.
Where do you land now? When Sleeping Beauty wakes up, what probability should she assign to the coin having landed heads? Is it 1/2, sticking to the fair coin?
Or is it 1/3, reflecting her situation of being awake in one of three possible scenarios? Or perhaps something else entirely?
There's really no substitute for grappling with these problems yourself, turning them over in your mind.
It's a great way to build better probabilistic intuition, thinking through scenarios where our common sense might lead us astray.
And maybe notice other areas where the frequency of our experience might not map neatly onto underlying chances.
Indeed, lots to ponder.
Well, thanks for exploring this fascinating puzzle with us on this deep dive. We hope it gives you plenty to think about regarding probability, perspective, and just how weird reality can sometimes seem.